The massive ship appeared without warning. One moment, Earth's deep space scanner showed nothing but the usual cosmic background noise. The next, an object larger than anything humans had ever built materialized just beyond the moon's orbit. At Earth Defense Force headquarters in Geneva, alarms blared through every corridor. Admiral James Gray stood before the main display screen, his weathered face illuminated by the red emergency lights. Around him, operators called out readings that made less and less sense with each passing second. "Sir, the object is. It's bigger than 3 aircraft carriers put together. Energy readings are off the charts. Multiple smaller craft detected launching from the main vessel." Admiral Gray straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. Humanity had prepared for this moment for decades, but now that it was here, everything felt surreal. "Open all frequencies," he ordered. "Let's try to talk to them." The massive alien vessel, sleek and gleaming like polished chrome in the sunlight, had stopped moving. Its hull bore markings in an unknown script, but one symbol stood out, clearly the ship's name or designation. Later, they would learn it was called the Star Sovereign, flagship of the Galactic Empire's Third Fleet. "This is Admiral James Gray of the Earth Defense Force. On behalf of humanity, we welcome you to our solar system and wish to establish peaceful contact." The silence that followed lasted exactly 30 seconds. Then the reply came. The alien commander appeared on every screen and display device on Earth simultaneously, showing complete control over human communication systems. He looked almost human, except for his metallic-looking skin and eyes that seemed to glow from within. "I am Imperial Commander Reed of the Galactic Empire's Star Sovereign. Your primitive attempts at communication are noted." Admiral Gray felt a chill run down his spine at the dismissive tone. "We are a peaceful species, but we are prepared to." Silence. Commander Reed's voice carried the weight of thousands of conquered worlds. "Your species has been observed for some time. Your technology is primitive. Your weapons are obsolete. Your defenses are meaningless. The Galactic Empire requires new territories and resources. You will surrender your world and accept integration into the Empire." In the control room, operators looked at each other with growing fear. Admiral Gray kept his voice steady. "Perhaps we could discuss terms that would benefit both our peoples." Commander Reed's laugh echoed through the speakers. "Benefits? You have nothing to offer. Your most advanced weapons are simple projectiles and crude nuclear devices. Your ships can barely reach your own moon. The Empire's smallest scout vessel contains technology more advanced than everything your species has ever created. Then why not share knowledge?" We cooled. "You have 24 hours. Commander Reed's eyes flashed. "Surrender, and your species will serve as labor in the Empire's outer colonies. Resist, and we will demonstrate the power of a truly advanced civilization. To prove we are not completely heartless, here is a small demonstration of what awaits those who defy the Empire." On the screens, a beam of energy lanced out from the Star Sovereign. In orbit, one of Earth's largest communications satellites vanished in a flash of light. 24 hours. Commander Reed repeated. "Use them wisely." The transmission cut off. Admiral Gray turned to his second-in-command. "Get me every world leader on a secure line. Now." As his staff rushed to comply, he stared at the image of the Star Sovereign looming over Earth. Its hull gleamed with an arrogance that matched its commander's attitude. "Sir," a young operator looked up from her station. "What are we going to do?" "Their technology. It's like magic compared to ours." Admiral Gray allowed himself a small smile. "Do you know what their biggest mistake is?" He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of his nervous staff. "They think technology alone wins wars. They forget that necessity is the mother of invention, and humanity has always been at its most creative when backed into a corner." He turned back to the main screen. "Get me Professor Walker at the Advanced Weapons Research Division, and someone find me everything we know about railgun technology. If they think our primitive weapons are useless, They're about to learn a very expensive lesson. Professor Walker's research lab was a mess of papers, old coffee cups, and half-built machines. The old scientist hadn't slept in 36 hours, not since the alien ship appeared. He was studying video footage of the Star Sovereign when Admiral Gray walked in. "Professor, please tell me you have something," the Admiral said, looking at the chaos of blueprints spread across every surface. Walker's tired eyes lit up. "Actually, I do. Look at this." He pointed to a screen showing the moment when the alien ship destroyed Earth's satellite. "Did you notice something strange about their shield technology? Besides the fact that it makes them practically invincible?" Gray asked. "That's just it. It doesn't." Walker grabbed a tablet and played another video, this one showing space debris bouncing off the Star Sovereign's hull. "See that? Small rocks and debris pass right through their energy shields. They only stop energy weapons." Gray leaned closer. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" "Positive. Their shields are designed to block lasers, plasma, and other energy-based attacks. They probably haven't faced a civilization that still uses physical projectiles in centuries." Walker started digging through his papers. "Remember that Railven project they canceled last year? Said it was too old-fashioned. The one where you wanted to shoot metal rods at high speeds." Gray remembered the project well. The military had chosen to fund laser weapon research instead. "Exactly." Walker pulled out old blueprints. "We don't need fancy energy weapons. We need something simple, something their advanced shields can't stop. A piece of metal moving at 30 kilometers per second will do more damage than any laser." Gray's communicator buzzed. World leaders were gathering for an emergency meeting. "Can you make it work?" "Better." Walker grinned. "We already have most of what we need in orbit. Those mining stations we use to process asteroid materials. They have electromagnetic launchers for moving ore. We just need to modify them." Within hours, the world's leaders gathered virtually. Admiral Gray and Professor Walker presented their plan. "This is insane," the Russian president said. "We're going to fight an advanced alien empire with glorified mining equipment." "Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one," Walker replied. "Their arrogance is their weakness. They expect energy weapons, not chunks of metal moving at astronomical speeds." The Chinese premier spoke next. "How many stations can we modify in time?" 12, Walker answered. "If we work fast and coordinate globally." "Their shields will be useless against kinetic weapons," Gray added, "and they won't expect it. They think we're primitive. Let's use that against them." The American president leaned forward in his screen. "What are our chances?" Walker looked at his calculations. "If we hit them in the right spots, we can breach their hull. Their armor is designed to deflect energy weapons, not withstand physical impacts. It's like throwing rocks at a soap bubble, complex and beautiful, but ultimately fragile." The room fell silent as the world leaders considered their options. They had 18 hours left before the empire's deadline. "What do you need?" the Indian Prime Minister finally asked. "Everything," Gray said. "Every space-capable nation working together. Every mining station converted. Every available resource." Walker pulled up a diagram of the Star Sovereign. "We've identified weak points in their design. Their arrogance means they never bothered to hide their ship's structure. Why hide from primitives, after all?" "And if we fail?" someone asked. "Then we fail fighting," Gray answered. "But we might just show the galaxy that humanity isn't as primitive as they think." The vote was unanimous. Within minutes, space stations around Earth buzzed with activity. Mining equipment was quickly modified into weapons. Engineers worked frantically to turn simple electromagnetic launchers into devastating railguns. In orbit, the Star Sovereign watched Earth's activities with mild amusement. Imperial Commander Reed observed the increased movement around the mining stations and smiled. "Look at them scrambling to acknowledge our superiority," he told his bridge crew. "These primitives finally understand their place in the galaxy." He couldn't have been more wrong. Time was running out. With only 12 hours remaining before the Empire's deadline, Earth's orbital stations had become centers of frantic activity. Space crews worked in their suits, converting mining equipment into weapons while trying to look like they were preparing for surrender. At Station 7, the largest of Earth's orbital facilities, Professor Walker floated near a massive electromagnetic launcher. "Careful with those power connections," he called to the engineers. "We only get one shot at this." The station's original mining launcher was 30 meters long. Now, with modifications, it looked more like a massive gun barrel pointed into space. Workers had stripped everything non-essential from the station to power it. "Professor," a young engineer named Tom waved from inside the control room. "We found more tungsten rods in Storage Bay 4. Pure stuff, meant for mining equipment." Walker smiled. Tungsten was perfect. Dense, hard, and able to withstand the extreme heat of acceleration. "Get them all. Shape them into pointed rods. The sharper, the better." Below them, Earth's cities had gone dark. People moved into underground shelters, fearing the Empire's response. Coastal areas were empty, evacuated in case the plan failed. The world held its breath. Admiral Gray's voice came through the station's comm system. "Status report. Stations 1 through 4 are ready," Walker answered, checking his tablet. 5 through 8 need 2 more hours. 9 through 12, maybe 4 hours. "The Empire's getting suspicious," Gray warned. "They've been scanning our stations more frequently." Walker looked through the station's window at the Star Sovereign. The massive ship hung in space like an artificial moon, its hull gleaming. "Let them scan. All they'll see is mining equipment. That's the beauty of it. We're not hiding anything. We're just using it differently." In the Star Sovereign's command center, Imperial Commander Reed watched the humans' activities. "Report," he ordered his science officer. "The primitives appear to be securing their mining operations," the officer said. "Probably trying to protect their resources before surrendering." Reed nodded. As expected, these lesser species always try to save their precious materials. Pathetic. Back at Station 7, Walker supervised the loading of the first tungsten rod. The weapon was simple, a 3-meter rod, sharpened at one end, weighing nearly a ton. At the speeds they planned to launch it, it would hit with the force of a small nuclear weapon. "Power systems at 90%, Tom reported. "We've stripped every non-essential system. Life support is running on backups." Walker nodded. "Same story at all stations. We're betting everything on this." A message flashed on screens throughout the station. 6 hours to deadline. In Geneva, Admiral Gray coordinated with military commands worldwide. Submarines hidden in the depths were ready with backup plans. Fighter pilots sat in their cockpits, knowing their jets were useless against the Empire's ships, but ready to fight anyway. "Sir," an operator called out, "the Empire's launching scout ships." Gray watched as smaller vessels emerged from the Star Sovereign. "They're getting impatient." "Walker, how much longer?" "We need all stations ready," Walker replied through the comm. "A partial attack would just warn them." The scout ships moved closer to Earth's stations. Walker ordered his crews to keep working normally. "Don't react," he told them. "Let them think we're scared primitives doing busy work." One scout ship passed close to Station 7. Inside the station, engineers held their breath. The modified launcher was in plain view, but from the Empire's perspective, it looked like standard mining equipment. The scout ship moved on. "They're so convinced of their superiority," Walker said quietly. "They can't imagine we could threaten them." With 3 hours left, Station 9 reported ready. Then 10, 11. Final station completing modifications, Walker announced with just 2 hours to spare. All weapons loaded. Power systems charged. Admiral Gray's voice was firm. "All stations, prepare for Operation Slingshot. Remember your targets. Wait for my signal." In orbit, 12 stations waited silently, their primitive weapons aimed at the most advanced warship in the galaxy. The Empire's deadline approached, and humanity prepared to teach them a lesson about underestimating lesser species. The countdown began. The deadline arrived. Imperial Commander Reed stood on the bridge of the Star Sovereign, looking down at Earth with cold eyes. "Send the message," he ordered. "Let's show these primitives what happens to those who waste our time." On Earth's surface, in the underground command center, Admiral Gray received the Empire's final warning. The message was simple: your time is up. Witness true power. The Star Sovereign's weapons began to glow. Energy gathered at multiple points along its hull, creating beautiful but deadly patterns of light. "Sir," an operator called out, "they're powering up their main weapons." Gray touched his communicator. "Professor Walker, are we ready?" In Station 7, Walker watched his screens carefully. "All stations report ready. Waiting for the target to reach optimal position." The Star Sovereign fired its first shot. A beam of energy streaked through space, destroying 3 communication satellites in a single blast. The message was clear: this was just the beginning. Reed smiled as he watched the destruction. "Prepare the main cannon. Target their largest city. Once they see it vanish, the rest will surrender quickly." The massive warship began to move, positioning itself for a better firing angle. Unknown to its crew, this was exactly what Earth's defenders had been waiting for. Walker's voice crackled through secure channels. "Target is moving into position. All stations, power up your launchers. Remember, we need perfect timing." Inside each station, electromagnetic launchers hummed to life. Tungsten rods, each weighing nearly a ton, sat ready in their launch tubes. Targeting computers, running Professor Walker's calculations, tracked the Star Sovereign's movement. 30 seconds to optimal firing position, Walker announced. On the Star Sovereign's bridge, alarms suddenly blared. "Sir," a crew member called out. "Energy spikes detected from the mining stations." Reed waved dismissively, probably trying to power up their defenses. "Primitive technology is no threat to our shields." 20 seconds, Walker counted down. Admiral Gray stood in the command center, watching multiple screens showing each station's status. "Steady," he said. "Wait for it." 10 seconds. The Star Sovereign's main cannon began to glow brighter, preparing to fire. 5 seconds. Reed raised his hand, ready to give the order to fire. Now. 12 electromagnetic launchers fired simultaneously. 12 tungsten rods accelerated to incredible speeds in seconds. The Empire's sensors detected the launches, but classified them as minimal threats. Simple physical objects posed no danger to their advanced shields. This was their final mistake. The first rod struck the Star Sovereign's hull near its engines. At 30 kilometers per second, the impact was devastating. The rod punched through shields designed to stop energy weapons, tore through the supposedly impenetrable hull, and buried itself deep inside the massive ship. Before anyone could react, 11 more rods struck at different points. On the bridge, Reed was thrown off his feet as the ship shuddered violently. "What's happening?" he shouted. "Multiple hull breaches," his crew reported in panic. Shields had no effect. Physical damage to all decks. "Impossible," Reed screamed. "They're primitives. Their weapons are obsolete." In Station 7, Walker watched the impacts through telescopes. Direct hits confirmed. All 12 stations report successful strikes. The Star Sovereign's smooth hull now sported 12 holes, each perfectly round, each devastating in its effect. Emergency force fields tried to contain the atmosphere leaking from the breaches. Admiral Gray allowed himself a small smile. "Send the message." All across Earth's frequencies, on channels the Empire could hear, a single message played. "From Earth with regards. Perhaps you should reconsider your definition of primitive." The Star Sovereign's main cannon powered down as emergency systems diverted power to damage control. Inside the mighty ship, alarms blared as crews rushed to repair the damage from this impossible attack. "Status report," Reed demanded. His damage control officer's voice shook. "Sir, They shot holes in our ship with metal rods. Our shields, they didn't even slow them down. Reed stared at the damage reports in disbelief. The most powerful ship in the Empire's fleet, crippled by what he had dismissed as primitive weapons. And on Earth stations, engineers were already loading their launchers for a second volley. The Star Sovereign's perfect hull, once a symbol of imperial power, now bore 12 gaping wounds. Emergency force fields flickered around each hole, struggling to keep the ship's atmosphere from leaking into space. Imperial Commander Reed grabbed his command chair as another explosion rocked the ship. "Launch all fighters," he ordered. "Destroy those stations." Hundreds of smaller ships poured from the Star Sovereign's launch base. They looked like angry hornets emerging from a damaged nest, their weapons already charging. "Imperial fighters incoming," Admiral Gray announced from Earth's command center. "Walker, what's the status on the second volley?" In Station 7, Walker and his team worked frantically to reload their launcher. 8 minutes to ready, he reported. "But those fighters will reach us in 5. The first wave of Imperial fighters approached Earth's stations. Their energy weapons lit up space with deadly beams of light. But the stations weren't defenseless. "Activate point defense systems," Walker ordered. Hidden panels opened on each station, revealing rows of small railguns. These weren't the massive launchers that had wounded the Star Sovereign. They were smaller, faster-firing weapons designed to protect mining operations from asteroids. "Such primitive defenses," the lead Imperial fighter pilot reported. "This won't take long." The first fighter exploded as a stream of small metal slugs tore through its shields and hull. More fighters met the same fate as they came within range. Their shields, like the Star Sovereign's, were useless against physical projectiles. Impossible. Reed watched from his bridge as fighter after fighter exploded. How are they doing this? His science officer finally understood. "Sir, our shields, they're designed to stop energy weapons. These primitives, they're using simple metal projectiles, fast ones." In Station 7, Walker smiled as he watched the Imperial fighters scatter, trying new attack patterns. "They're learning," he said, "but not fast enough." "Admiral, we're ready for the second volley." All stations, Gray's voice was calm and clear. "Target their weapon systems. Fire when ready." 12 more tungsten rods launched from Earth's stations. The Star Sovereign, still dealing with damage from the first attack, tried to move. But the massive ship was too slow. This time, Reed was ready. "Evasive action," he ordered. The mighty warship's engines fired, trying to dodge. They managed to avoid 4 rods. The other 8 struck home. New explosions bloomed across the Star Sovereign's hull. One rod hit directly into a weapon array, causing a chain reaction that lit up space. Another pierced deep into the ship's power systems. "Direct hits," Walker announced. "Their main weapons are offline." On Earth, people emerged from shelters to watch the battle through telescopes and screens. They saw humanity's simple weapons bringing down the galaxy's most advanced warship. Reed's bridge was chaos. Smoke poured from damaged consoles. Warning lights flashed everywhere. "Status report," he demanded. "Main weapons destroyed. Power systems failing. Hull integrity at 40%. His crew reported. "Sir, nothing has ever penetrated our shields before." Walker's voice crackled across all frequencies again. "Ready to surrender, Commander. Or would you like another demonstration of our primitive technology?" In the command center, Gray watched the battle displays. The Imperial fighters were retreating, falling back to protect their wounded flagship. More than half had been destroyed by simple point defense guns. "Sir," an operator called out, "we're detecting power fluctuations in the Star Sovereign. Their reactor might be unstable." Walker's calculations appeared on Gray's screen. "The rod impacts have damaged their containment systems," the professor explained. "Their fancy reactor doesn't handle physical damage well." Reed received the same reports on his burning bridge. The mighty Star Sovereign, pride of the Imperial fleet, was being defeated by weapons its crew had laughed at just hours ago. "Sir," his second-in-command spoke quietly. Perhaps we underestimated them." Reed stared at the Earth stations, still pointed at his ship like drawn bows. His mighty energy weapons were useless. His fighter screen was devastated. And now, his ship's reactor was threatening to tear itself apart. All because they had dismissed humanity as primitive. Imperial Commander Reed stood in his damaged bridge, pride turning to desperation. "Prepare the backup weapons," he shouted. "Launch our remaining fighters. We cannot lose to primitives." The Star Sovereign, though heavily damaged, was far from defeated. Hidden weapon ports opened along its hull, revealing smaller but still powerful energy cannons. In Earth's command center, Admiral Gray watched new energy readings appear on his screens. "They're not done yet," he warned. "Walker, how many rods do we have left?" "3 per station," Walker replied from Station 7. "Not enough for another full attack." The Star Sovereign's secondary weapons fired. Beams of energy struck 2 of Earth's stations, melting through their outer hulls. Emergency systems activated, sealing off damaged sections. "Stations 3 and 5 hit," Walker reported. "They're targeting our launchers." Gray's face remained calm. "Activate Phase 2. Across Earth's orbit, hidden behind debris and damaged satellites, 50 small ships powered up their engines. They weren't warships. They were modified mining vessels, their normal drilling equipment replaced with reinforced rams. "Mining fleet ready," the fleet commander reported. "Beginning attack run." Reed noticed the new ships too late. More primitive ships, trying to run away. He laughed despite the situation. "Their simple vessels are no match for ore." His tactical officer interrupted. "Sir, they're accelerating, far beyond expected speeds." The mining ships had been stripped down to almost nothing. Everything, power systems, life support, every spare bit of energy, went to their engines. They were basically engines with cockpits, piloted by volunteers on a one-way mission. "Now," Gray ordered. 50 mining ships accelerated to suicide speeds, aimed at different parts of the Star Sovereign. The Imperial gunners, trained to fight energy weapons and missiles, struggled to track the small, fast targets. Evasive action. Reed screamed, but his damaged flagship responded too slowly. The first mining ship struck near the Star Sovereign's rear engines. Its reinforced ram, designed to break asteroids, punched through the already weakened hull. The ship's fuel tanks exploded on impact, causing even more damage. More mining ships followed. Some were destroyed by Imperial guns or fighters, but many hit their targets. Each impact weakened the mighty warship further. Walker watched from Station 7. The mining ships are punching holes in their armor. Their structural integrity is failing. In the command center, Gray received new readings. Their reactor containment is critical. All stations, prepare final volley. Target their power core. Reed felt his ship dying around him. Entire decks were open to space. Power systems failed across the ship. The mighty Star Sovereign, terror of 1,000 worlds, was being torn apart by what he had called primitive weapons. "Sir," his engineering chief called. "Reactor containment failing. We need to evacuate." "No." Reed grabbed his command console. "One final attack. Target their planet. We'll show them true power." The Star Sovereign's remaining weapons powered up, drawing energy from its failing reactor. The wounded ship turned toward Earth, preparing for one last act of destruction. Walker saw the power reading spike. "They're diverting all power to weapons." "Admiral, they're going to." "All stations, fire." Gray's order cut through all channels. The remaining tungsten rods launched from Earth's stations. 36 metal spears, each aimed with perfect precision, streaked toward the Star Sovereign's reactor sections. Reed watched the rods approach on his screens. In his last moments of command, he finally understood. His mighty ship, with all its advanced technology, had been defeated by the simplest of weapons. weapons so old, so basic, that his empire had forgotten to defend against them. Precision impacts, Walker announced. Direct hits on reactor sections. The Star Sovereign's hull split open as the rods pierced its reactor containment. Emergency systems failed. Escape pods launched in all directions as the mighty ship began to break apart. Reed stared at the Earth through his viewing screen, even as his bridge crew ran for the escape pods. The supposedly primitive planet had just taught the Empire a lesson it would never forget. Behind him, the reactor went critical. The Star Sovereign's reactor exploded in a burst of light brighter than the sun. The mighty warship, pride of the Imperial fleet, broke apart in a spectacular display that lit up Earth's sky. Fragments of the most advanced ship in the galaxy scattered across space, defeated by what its crew had called primitive weapons. In Earth's command center, Admiral Gray watched the explosion on multiple screens. "Status report," he ordered, his voice tired but firm. "Imperial escape pods detected." An operator reported. Approximately 300 survivors, including Commander Reed. The rest, she paused, didn't make it out. Professor Walker's voice came through the comm system from Station 7. "Our stations are damaged but holding. We lost 2 mining ships in the final attack. The crews knew the risks. They died heroes." Gray nodded solemnly. "Launch rescue operations. Pick up the survivors." He looked at the burning debris of the Star Sovereign. "Even enemies deserve mercy." The rescue ships found Commander Reed in the first escape pod. His metallic skin had lost its shine, and his glowing eyes were dim. As Earth's crews helped him aboard, he looked at their simple spacecraft with new understanding. "I don't understand," he said quietly. "Our technology, it was superior in every way." "Superior isn't always better," Walker replied, having come down from his station to meet the Imperial commander. "You built better force fields, better energy weapons, better ships. But you forgot the simple solutions. Sometimes a rock thrown well beats a fancy laser." News of the battle spread quickly across Imperial communications. The Empire had never intended to keep the attack secret. They had wanted the galaxy to witness Earth's submission. Instead, every Imperial world saw their greatest warship destroyed by a species they had called primitive. 1 week later, Admiral Gray stood before the United Nations. The Empire's survivors had been treated well, their injuries healed. Commander Reed sat in the audience, now a prisoner but treated with respect. "The battle is over," Gray announced, "but our work is just beginning. The Empire now knows we exist, and that we're not as primitive as they thought. But more importantly, other worlds watching have learned something too." Screens behind him showed messages from across the galaxy. Other species, long dominated by the Empire, had seen humanity's victory. Some had already begun using similar primitive weapons against Imperial ships. The Empire's aura of invincibility was broken. Commander Reed requested to speak. Standing before Earth's leaders, he looked different, humbled, but also somehow freer. "I have contacted Imperial High Command," he said. "I told them something they didn't want to hear. Humanity isn't primitive, they're innovative. They remember solutions we forgot. They think in ways we stopped thinking long ago." He paused. "I have recommended that the Empire offer Earth membership, not as a conquered world, but as equals." Professor Walker, sitting in the audience, smiled. His simple railguns had changed the galaxy's balance of power. Already, Earth was receiving messages from other worlds, seeking to learn about these primitive but effective weapons. "The Empire forgot something important," Walker told a group of reporters later. "They forgot that technology doesn't have to be complex to be effective. Humanity didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we never forgot our roots, never stopped thinking about simple solutions to complex problems." In orbit, Earth's stations were being repaired, but they weren't being dismantled. Instead, more were being built. The railguns remained, a reminder that humanity could defend itself. The Empire's survivors were eventually returned home. Commander Reed, before leaving, gave Earth's leaders one final warning. You've earned the Empire's respect, but also its attention. They'll come again, with ships protected against physical weapons. Admiral Gray smiled. Then we'll think of something else. That's what humans do best. We adapt, we think differently, we find new solutions. As Reed's transport left Earth's orbit, he looked back at the blue planet. The Empire had come expecting to find primitives. Instead, they had found a species that remembered what the Empire had forgotten. Sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their ability to think differently.